What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Max Torres with Scoop Duck. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button. It's been a little while since I've posted, so apologies for that. I was recently in the Los Angeles area visiting my girlfriend. It was awesome to see her and get to hang out with her, and then I also was able to visit St. John Bosco, which is one of the LA powerhouses down there, a school that Oregon has really established good relationships with. So I'll make sure to throw a little picture up here on the screen so you guys can see that. But that was really fun. Great trip overall. And then I was also finishing up my final project with my first class here in the J School at the U of O. So it was nice to finish that, wrap that up, and put that under my belt. In today's video, we have a huge interview. You can probably see it by the title that you see on your screen. We bring in the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Moseley. He's the beat reporter, more or less, for the football team. He's there at all the practices, follows the team when they go on the road. So he knows these players really well, knows the coaches well, knows the team well, and I thought he'd be a great resource to bring on the channel. So after I've hyped up this interview, I wanted to hop into that, get Rob's perspective, learn about some of his stories that he has to share with us. So I will see you guys after the interview. All right, I want to welcome in a big guest to the YouTube channel here. I want to welcome in the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Moseley. Rob, thanks for joining us. How's it going today?
It's going okay. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
Just trying to stay sane out here and talk about the Ducks whenever I can. So yeah, I kind of just want to get into this interview. Let's start off. Tell us about yourself and what your journey was to the U of O and becoming the editor-in-chief.
Sure. So I grew up in Northern California in the East Bay. Brady Aiello, who just graduated from the Oregon football team, he and I went to the same high school. Norm Van Brocklin, Oregon football legend, also went there. Acalanes High School in the East Bay area. And I went to U of O for undergrad. So my first year on campus was the fall of '94, which was a pretty good time to hit campus. Ducks started 1-2 that year. The next game was a home game against Iowa, which was actually my first week on campus. So that was my first Oregon football game. And then I was along for the ride the rest of the way. Was at the Kenny Wheaton game and went to the Rose Bowl that year and was pretty much hooked. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do career-wise when I got to school. I was young for my age. I was 17 when I got to U of O. I was in kind of one of those weird years growing up where I could have been held back and been part of my age group or started a grade early, and so I was a little ahead. And so it took me a couple years to figure out what I wanted to do, and then eventually I started working at the Daily Emerald on campus at U of O, and just got the bug for doing news. I was always a big reader, so writing kind of, I don't want to say it came naturally because I don't think I have some gift for it, but I could string words together. And then I got into the reporting element, and just got the bug. I was never a good athlete, so writing about sports was a cool way to kind of scratch the sports itch. Right. And again, writing was something that kind of I came to more easily than some other subjects. I tried to get a business minor at U of O. That fell horribly flat. I don't have a great head for numbers, as a lot of writers I've come to find out that's the case. But anyway, so I graduated in '99 from U of O. I worked for a couple years at an iteration of what is now, I think, called Ducks Illustrated magazine. It was called Fighting Ducks Review back then, and I worked there for about a year and a half. Still stuck around in Eugene, and then got a part-time job working at the Register Guard while I was still working at the magazine, about 2000. And for about a year and a half, worked part-time at the Guard and I got lucky. I covered a lot of football stuff, Oregon football stuff, because I had just done that for the Daily Emerald and for the magazine. And then got a job full-time at the Guard in about 2002, maybe. I don't remember exactly. First as a copy editor for a couple of years, and then as a reporter. I took over the Oregon football beat, I think, in 2007, which was more fortuitous timing. My arrival on campus was in '94, which is a good year. And then my first year as the beat writer was Chip Kelly's first year on staff. So that was fun. And then in 2013, I left the Register Guard and came to work internally at U of O. So I guess 7 years now going on. I've been working for the Ducks directly and writing for Go Ducks, and serving the fans on Twitter and Facebook and all that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great story. I'm from San Jose myself, so it's always cool to meet another Bay Area native up here, and coming to Eugene, and looks like you found your place, and haven't left since. So that's super cool.
I consider myself an Oregonian now for sure. Like I said, I was 17 when I left California. 43 now, so I definitely consider myself basically an Oregonian at this point. No doubt about that.
All right, there you go. Yeah, become one of the locals, it seems like.
Yep.
So yeah, we learned a little bit about you, but covering sports, stuff's up in the air right now. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to lately while we're all kind of starving for sports right now.
Yeah, I've been trying to kind of toe a line in terms of my coverage of like this year's football team, for instance, because we want people to be excited. We want people to know, all the talent that's returning. People who are watching this probably don't need to be reminded, because if you're watching this, you're probably one of the diehards of the diehards, the elite of the elites in terms of your daily investment in Oregon football news. But we want kind of the more casual fan too, to have a sense of how much promise this team has. And we want to promote that. So, when the preseason award watch lists were coming out, and, today we're filming this on a Thursday, and the coaches poll just came out, and, we're number 9. So we want people to be excited about that. On the other hand, we don't want to, make promises we can't keep. We don't know for sure what this season's going to look like. We have a schedule, but obviously, it's built in to be flexible in case games need to move. And, as everyone knows, kind of the virus is really dictating kind of how things go right now. So, I'm trying to toe a line between, promoting this team and having people be aware of how much promise it has, while also saying, hey, we don't know if and when this team's going to take the field next. So, I don't want to get people's hopes up too high and then really have them dashed, So, but what that's enabled us to do is really devote some time to things that I've always kind of wanted to cover and haven't been able to devote as much time to. So, for instance, graduation in mid-June, usually we have a bunch of track meets going on, and, with any luck, the baseball season's still going on. The softball season hopefully is just wrapping up because they made a long postseason run. And so graduation, we try to acknowledge it, but sometimes not to the extent that maybe it merits. And we were really able to dive into graduation coverage this year, which I appreciated the chance to do. And then, now, summer months would be a lot of, vacation and kind of resting up for what's going to be the grind of the fall. Well, we don't know what the grind of the fall is going to look like. We don't know if it's going to be a grind. Mm-hmm. And so, I haven't taken as much time off as I usually would. And so that's enabled more coverage, particularly of all of our, what we call the products. And, particularly the WNBA group and the Major League Baseball group. That's kind of new for us at Oregon. We're used to having some guys in the NFL. We're used to having some guys in the NBA, but this rookie class in the NBA has been really exciting to follow. And then the baseball program is starting to see, 4, 5, 6 guys get to the big leagues. It used to be 1, maybe 2, and it'd be a cup of coffee in some cases. But now we're seeing guys like Scott Heineman and David Peterson and Tyler Anderson look like they've got some promise and they're sticking around for a while. Tyler was kind of a forebearer, but now he's got some compatriots, Cole Irvin and Kyle Garlick with the Phillies. So devoting some time to that has been fun. It's the ultimate goal is to be writing about football practices and football games come fall. But there's been a lot of other worthy stuff too.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the other sports that you're covering, and I think, people get this idea when they think of Oregon, it's just, Tracktown USA or just Autzen and the football program, everything that comes along with that. But, there's a ton of amazing athletes here across, a bunch of different sports. So, yeah, that's kind of what you've been up to. So now I kind of want to focus on, the bread and butter, the football team. First question, with them, tell me a little bit about what it was like to cover the team last year after they, really saw a progression from, going 4-8 in 2016 to becoming Pac-12 champions and heading to the Rose Bowl.
It was just really fulfilling when you talk about that timeline and knowing what guys like, particularly those seniors that had been around for the 16 season and, Justin Herbert and Troy Dye in particular, being just the leaders on each side of the ball. I'm never going to, there's a lot of things I've been fortunate enough to experience that I'm never going to forget, the Heisman trip with with Marcus, and even going to New York for the Campbell Trophy with Justin last year was really, really fun. And tons of other moments from other sports too. But that post-game scene at the Rose Bowl, just kind of the party that it turned into on the field. And, the band was playing well after the game, and guys were lingering on the field instead of going right to the locker room, grabbing chunks of the grass to bring home, celebrating with roses and dancing along to shout. And so many fans who stuck around to sort of join in that celebration. I'm never going to forget that. And I think, that was a culmination for a lot of those guys, even the younger guys. They knew what the seniors had gone through, and they even experienced a little bit of it, as sophomores. So it was cool to get to watch them enjoy that and take a big picture approach. Because, I think sometimes when you're younger, and then when you're caught up in the grind of a season, it's hard to think big picture, and it's hard to really reflect on the journey as a whole rather than just the most recent step. And you got the feeling really in that moment that guys really were taking a big picture approach to appreciating how far they'd come. And that was awesome. Just the next to last play of the game when Herbert takes a knee, and you could see just the emotion come over him. It was really fulfilling. I was really happy for those guys because they put in a lot of work, obviously.
Yeah, it's definitely a testament, like you were saying, to those seniors who, they were down in the dumps, and then they stuck with it, and through a coaching transition, no less. Definitely want to get into that a little bit later, and just see all that hard work pay off. It's got to be awesome. And then now looking to 2020. We saw a lot of seniors graduate, and some go to the next level. And now we're kind of turning our attention to younger guys like Kayvon Thibodeau, who took the country by storm last year. And then you got freshmen like Justin Flo and Noah Sewell joining his brother up here. I want to talk about them a little bit, and maybe who are some of the freshmen that you think you have your eyes on as far as making an impact on the team this next season?
Yeah, I would say those linebackers for sure. I think when you're at this level, you've got some talent. When you've recruited at the level Oregon's recruited at the last few years, you've got some talent at a lot of places. And it's not, there's some positions where it's not necessarily going to be an easy rotation to crack. But when you lose a Troy Dye, and then you're recruiting at that level, the best two inside linebackers in the country, I'll be really interested to see, the first week or so of practices, where do Flo and Sewell start in the rotation, and where are they after 3, 4, 5 days once they get their feet under them a little bit? Because you think the potential's there to really make an impact early. By that same token, a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, we saw by the end of last year, he was one of the most disruptive defensive players in the entire country. The job he did in the Pac-12 championship game and the job he did in the Rose Bowl, the improvement he showed over the course of the year was really impressive. And yet he obviously had a ton of talent when he first got here too. But, you had a guy like Gus Cumberlander who was here and who would put in the work. I love the excitement for the recruits, and it's definitely merited, given the level this program's recruiting at now. But, sometimes we run the risk too of overlooking some guys who've really put in a lot of time and really know their stuff. And coaches just value so much. Hey, they value talent, speed, and power and all that as much as anything. But, when a guy really knows his stuff, he can give himself an edge over somebody maybe whose, physical gifts are at a little different level. So I think there's going to be competition still, and nobody's going to be handed anything. But yeah, I think I'm not going to try to deviate from the obvious. I think, when you look at the talent of those linebackers and then losing Troy, and then you look at other positions where it seems like a lot of other places on both sides of the ball, you look like you have some veteran returning options. Where Flo and Sewell fit is really going to be an intriguing part of preseason camp.
Yeah, a lot of holes to fill, and kind of ways to, different ways to slice it. Where do I put this guy, and how does it look with this combination of talent? So I think that
look at a guy like Dante Manning. He's a stud, but there's so many guys coming back in the secondary. By the same token, you just look at him in a vacuum and think that guy's good enough to play for sure, and it maybe is, probably you could say probably he is, but there's so much other talent returning too. It's just how do all the pieces fit together, and that's what was so exciting, particularly about this defense, is there's so many pieces back and different kinds of pieces, and you could just look at that in the secondary, but it's reflected throughout the defense as well. You can use a lot of different personnel groupings, combinations. So, Andy Avalos, it's a good problem to have, but there's a lot to sort through once camp begins.
Yeah, you mentioned Dante Manning. He's another one of those, God, 3 5-star freshmen that we're looking at potentially playing on the same side of the ball. You mentioned how deep this secondary is. Being a guy like Manning coming in to a loaded room like that, what do you think his mentality is coming back?
Well, I would hope it would be that, in guys like Demo and Thomas Graham, you've got some dudes who played a lot of football, and pick their brains, because they're willing to be leaders in my experience. And they've banked a lot of reps and a lot of experience. They've learned some lessons the hard way. And now they're two of the elite corners in the conference, veteran corners in the conference. Mikael Wright obviously has a ton of ability too. So there's another guy who you say, well, he merits playing time too. So, on one hand, you got to be patient. You got to be respectful of the fact that there's veterans in front of you. On the other hand, you got to say, hey, I don't care who's in front of me. I'm going to compete my tail off, and I'm going to try to prove I'm the best man too. So I think you have to be of two minds. Ultimately you have to be competitive. It's all about competition. You want to push yourself. You want to push the guys in front of you, all that. By the same token, understanding, hey, there's some guys who've proven themselves. I think, we loved the attitude Cliff Harris brought to this program a decade ago. I'm here to help the Ducks win a natty, and I'm going to be the cheese on top of the nachos, all that. Bravado like that is great, and particularly at a position like corner, you appreciate it. It can be a helpful characteristic. But by the same token, understand there's some guys who can probably help you in your process too. And so don't be afraid to seek some guidance from some vets while also competing with them for reps.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned the competition there. I think, with a lot of these blue bloods that are consistently in the playoff, they're consistently bringing in these players, freshmen, that are, they step on campus and like, hey, I'm gunning for that job. And regardless of the depth that's returning, sometimes they find their way into that starting spot, like Derek Stingley at LSU, young guy. LSU is known for their defensive backs, walks right in and, takes a spot. And with all the talk around the defense, it's been interesting to see kind of how Oregon's transformed a little bit from a school that's known so much for its offense to, really focusing on the defense now looking into the season.
Yeah, I think if you look, both sides of the ball, it's been pretty remarkable how quickly Mario Cristobal has been able to kind of reshape the narrative, and the players as well, have reshaped the narrative about this program and what it stands for. Because, obviously, you look back in the Chip Kelly era, everybody thought Oregon wanted to run around you, not through you, that it was all finesse rather than power. I think those of us who, for me, who covered that team and fans who watched that team knew that wasn't the case, that there was some pretty phenomenal linemen on both sides of the ball. And I think if you look at the defenses from those elite teams, 2010, 2011, those defenses statistically are as competitive as any that this program has ever fielded. But the narrative was that was a team that wanted to outscore you, try to win 40-30, even though that wasn't necessarily reality. That was the narrative about that team. And narrative can be a hard thing to change once it takes root in the national consensus, as that one had. And yet Mario Cristobal has just flipped it on its head, and made this program be about, power in the trenches and playing tough defense. You just look back at that Red Box Bowl a couple of years ago. I don't think anybody would have thought Oregon was a team that was constructed to beat Michigan State 7-6. Now that's not a game any of us want to go back and watch on DVR again anytime soon. It wasn't the prettiest, but it was a win for the Ducks against a team with a very physical reputation in a low-scoring game that you had to kind of grind it out and slog through. And, as Alex Mirabal, the offensive line coach, likes to say, one more point. You just want one more point. And the Ducks did that. So, a game like that, for as ugly as it might have been in some ways, goes a long way toward just totally flipping the narrative about what this team is about and what its foundational principles are.
Yeah, gosh, I was at that Red Box Bowl. I made it to 5 games that year, not even being a student at the U of O yet. I was still at Gonzaga, but that was a tough one to watch. I love how you talk about the narrative being changed by Mario Cristobal. I cover a lot of recruiting, and the recruits talk about the culture that they see building, but I'm not there with the players. I don't see what's going on. In your mind, what did that culture change look like with the players, transitioning from Willie Taggart to Mario Cristobal now?
Well, I think Coach Taggart kind of started the process in some ways. I know there's a lot of mixed feelings amongst the fan base about Coach Taggart, but I think there's two things that need to be acknowledged for forever about Coach Taggart. And one, being the first black head football coach here is not insignificant. I've said before, to be at practice every day and see 40, 50, whatever it is, young black men be able to look up at their head coach and see someone who looked like them and say that can be a reality. That's not an aspirational thing. That's our head coach. He got to the top of the mountain, and maybe I can too. I think that's not an insignificant thing. That's a big deal. And it was a big deal to a lot of those guys. But also just we needed a course correction. I mean, we needed to get punched in the face as a program. And I think, just the results on the field in 2016 were a punch in the face or a cold splash of water, whatever you want to call it. But just, things had gotten to the point where, a course correction was needed. And Coach Taggart provided that. He preached toughness nonstop. And I think, Mario Cristobal just took that to a different level. Talking to guys, the harder it gets, the tougher we get, all that, just really driving that into guys' heads. And I think Coach Feld and the strength and conditioning staff and their program has been huge in really instilling that in guys too. In the fourth quarter program, you can train yourself to push through anything, but you do have to train yourself to do it. So let's do that. So, I think, the staff that left after 2016 obviously accomplished a ton of things, and they're owed a huge debt of gratitude as well. But the way things were at in that snapshot of that moment, a course correction was needed. Coach Taggart really got that jump started, and then just Coach Cristobal just took it and absolutely ran with it.
Yeah, I love how you talk about like that, like the course correction. I feel like, after the Chip Kelly years and, Mark Helfrich was here and we went to the national championship and we were, really still, I feel like in a way trying to hang on to the past while the rest of college football, they all caught up. They all, came with the hurry up offense, the no huddle, and, being that fast, elusive, elite team that I feel kind of put Oregon on the map to an extent. But it's interesting to see how things have changed, and it's a whole different animal.
No doubt about it. Yeah. The direction and the leadership that Coach Taggart and then Coach Cristobal showed was there. I think, the previous staff, I think Mark Helfrich, I think to his credit, what he wanted to do is let guys, I think he wanted to entrust guys that, hey, if I give you a little bit of freedom to mature and grow up and kind of become a man, you'll do that. And I don't want to feel like I have to baby you. I respect you more than that, to feel like I've got to baby you through that process. But different guys come at different speeds. Different guys grow up at different speeds. I mean, I'm a shining example. I mean, it took me a long time after I got to U of O to figure out what I wanted to major in, and yet we expect these guys to demonstrate responsibility in so many ways, on the field and off the field, and demonstrate so much maturity. But I think, guys maybe needed a little bit more of a hands-on approach than that group was probably getting in maybe 15, 16. And again, Coach Taggart just grabbed the bull by the horns, and Coach Cristobal obviously, again, just took it and ran with it and has taken it to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. Taggart might not have had the best exit, but he's a big part of, I feel like, while we're today.
I get it. That last weekend was awkward. It just stunk for all of us. It put a bunch of people in a tough position. I would suppose if you ask Coach Taggart at this point if there's anything he'd do different, he might say that there's some things he might have done differently. That's not an easy position to be in for anyone. There's no right way to navigate a situation like that. And I fully acknowledge that people who just can't really get over the circumstances of the departure. But I hope that people can take a little bit more of a big picture approach and appreciate kind of the new direction that he helped forge too.
Absolutely. Something the program can learn from. Two more big ones that I want to hit on here. As we head into this 2020 season, it's a season for as elite as the defense is. It also comes with a lot of uncertainty on the offensive side of the ball. We're replacing a 4-year starter in Justin Herbert. What can you tell us about this impending quarterback battle between Tyler Shuck and most likely Anthony Brown?
I think it's really intriguing. Anthony Brown's presence makes a lot of sense because the guys behind Tyler are so unproven, and even Tyler's body of work at the collegiate level is relatively thin compared to a Justin Herbert or somebody like that. I think some of the game action he got last year was really instructive for him, and I think also showed the current team just what he's got in store if he could be the guy. And there's so much confidence in him now internally in the program. He exudes leadership. As Coach Moorhead says, I feel like if the starting quarterback walks into the room, you shouldn't have to ask, is that the starting quarterback? And Tyler's like that. If Tyler walks into the room and you ask somebody who didn't know football, which of these guys is the quarterback, they'd probably point at Tyler. Just there's the way he carries himself. And Anthony Brown might have some of that too. I haven't met him yet just because of the circumstances of the timing of his arrival here and then, the pandemic and everything. But Tyler definitely has that, and he's different than Justin Herbert in that way. Justin Herbert, he didn't necessarily want to exude that because, he didn't love the attention. He didn't love the spotlight, So when he walked into a room, he was a little happier to try to blend in as much as a 6'6" built like a robot quarterback from the future guy could be. He was a little more comfortable, taking a back seat to maybe somebody else. Where Tyler, he's not a jerk about it. I've always found him to be respectful, but just a commanding presence about him. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how things play out. I fully expect Tyler to get the first rep on the first day of camp, and then you just proceed from there and see how the competition goes. I was only on hand for, I think, 2 of the 4 spring practices, maybe 3, at least 2, maybe 3. I haven't been around Coach Moorhead that much either. And so I'm not sure what kind of approach he's going to take to this situation in terms of how reps are going to be apportioned, things like that. So, but given the lack of experience behind Tyler, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think Mario Cristobal basically put it like, you owe it to the team to make sure there's another option in case the worst should happen. So if nothing else, if Tyler's the starter, and something should happen to him, you want to make sure you have an option behind him who's ready to go. And for as much talent as guys like Butterfield and Millen and those guys might have, they're absolutely unproven at this point. So having a guy with a lot of experience under his belt, that sure helps.
Yeah, definitely. I think some people kind of raised their eyebrow when they saw, Anthony Brown, committed to Oregon, and everyone's like, "Hey, I thought it was Tyler Shuck's team. Like, why do this?" But at least have a backup. You mentioned Joe Moorhead for a second, and I know you, from the sounds of it, you didn't see a whole lot of spring. I mean, no one really did. But with Marcus Arroyo now at UNLV, and you bring in a guy who's really, really well known for his offense, and Joe Moorhead, are there any areas of this of his scheme or this offense that you think he can? Or let me phrase it. Are there any areas that you think he can specifically improve on to take this team a step forward?
Well, Mario Cristobal said just in the 4 practices that Oregon had that the amount of explosive plays were took a big jump this spring over the early practices the last couple of years. So I think that indicates that's an area where that he's excited about and perhaps wants to see the ability to create more big plays. I think any offensive coordinator, every head coach in the country right now wants to see his offense create even more explosive. LSU would like to be even more explosive than they were last year. That everybody's always looking to raise the bar. So, but it might look a little different. And I'm the last guy to get in deep with X's and O's because I just don't have a great head for that. I never played the game. I feel like 95% of a college football audience is much more interested in who's playing rather than how they're being deployed in terms of X's and O's. So I don't devote a ton of time into that sort of thing. But in talking with Coach Moorhead, he wants what he's described as kind of an RPO based West Coast style, run game, short pass game with a more of deep shots and trying to create explosive plays too. The RPO is obviously kind of what he's known for, and he doesn't shy away from that. So I'm interested to see if an ignoramus like myself will even notice much of a difference. I might not, which is fine. I keep myself out of trouble at practice, by being ignorant of very much X and O wise, because what might be obvious to someone else is an obvious change. I wouldn't even notice, and therefore I can't screw up and report something I shouldn't.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, so either way you put it, I mean, there's a lot of excitement, reasonably so, around this, the potential of this team, offense, defense, whatever way you want to look at it. They got weapons everywhere. Devin Williams, huge receiver, comes in from USC, so got to unleash his talents. I want to stick on the offense for a little bit here. Another one of the big question marks that people are, I'm sure, asking about is the departure of, all those offensive linemen. You return Outland Trophy winner and Panay Sewell, but you got options like Stephen Jones and Jonah Tuanu, I think is how you say it. So tell me a little bit about how you think the team's going to tackle that transition.
Well, there's a ton of confidence right now in Stephen Jones, and guys who've seen him and been around him just say his body is really transformed. That he kind of has made the transformation physically that Panay made between his first and second year, slimming down a little bit, taking off a little bit of bad weight, putting on some good weight. So there's really a lot of excitement about Stephen Jones around the program. So I think in terms of your bookend tackles, having Panay on one side and Stephen on the other side is something that the team feels really confident about. And Alex Forsyth is a guy who Mario Cristobal, I think, really respects too. And he's kind of got a little Calvin Throckmorton in him. And I think, they're both really, really smart, which helps them play multiple positions, So they're very, very, very versatile too. So you can plug them in kind of wherever. So I expect Alex Forsyth to play somewhere. A lot of the spring, or a lot of the little that was spent in the spring was those two big tackles on the ends, Forsyth in the middle, and then there's been some awareness of that group of seniors from last year leaving en masse, and the need to maybe have some veterans ready to go, which is why you plumb the junior college ranks. And so having Sala and TJ Bass, as guys who have a little bit of they're a little bit older, a little more physically developed, and have a little bit more experience than some younger guys, that helps you too. So they can be options. They're both really big, powerful guys who can play inside. And so, I think, there's been an eye on this transition with the recruiting the last few years, going really heavy a couple years ago with that freshman class that included Panay and Stephen, knowing that, you were going to probably need a couple of those guys to be players at this point by 2020, but then also going to the JC ranks too and saying, hey, just kind of like the Anthony Brown situation, an insurance policy, you hope all your freshmen develop, but just in case, you want to make sure you're ready for any situation too. So getting some transfers can help kind of hedge your bets a little bit.
Yeah. It's so crazy to see, the size of these guys. I was getting groceries last week, and it was my first time seeing these Oregon players in person off the field. And I was just like, tower over me.
I tell people all the time, the 2 years ago when that freshman O-line class, like I'll never forget that the first day of practice, that camp 2 years ago when that freshman O-line camp or class showed up. I mean, they were just so massive. They looked so different. There've been years past where like a Jeff Schwartz would hit campus, or back in the day, like an Aaron Clovis or a Mike Belisle, who are highly rated guys who were real big when they got here, tall guys filled out. But not to have 5 or 6 guys that were built like that. I mean, that whole freshman, it was just a herd of elephants out there. But I'll tell you what, last year when the D-line class got here with Ware Hudson and Dorless and Christian Williams, those guys are built different than any freshman D-line class I can really remember. Just really big in the seat, as they say. not a guys who had to put on a ton of weight. Yeah, they're going to have to reshape their bodies a little bit, but just looks different starting from day one. They're starting from a different base than any freshman defensive line class. So it just gets back to what we were talking about, closer to the top, just kind of the cultural change and the, just Mario Cristobal has just completely changed what this program is about. And those two classes for me kind of illustrate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's something that we're getting to watch, right here in Eugene. Well, we're right around 30 minutes, so I want to be respectful of your time. I just have one more question I want to leave on. So we've talked about some of the big topics, the QB battle, the offensive line transition. What do you think is one storyline that you're going to have your eye on that maybe not every Oregon fan, is aware of heading into fall camp?
Well, again, I think anybody who's watching this, there's probably not a lot that's not on their radar. So I very much appreciate how locked in your audience stays throughout the year. It's, kind of part of my job is sort of stoking the passion, but I don't have to do that with the folks. Anybody who's watching this, their passion is stoked 24/7. So I don't want that left to go unsaid. That's really appreciated. I don't know that there's like an unknown or an untalked about element of this team. I think you can nitpick little things here and there. I think you look at the place kicker. I think Cam Lewis had a strange season. He had a harder time with shorter field goals than he did with longer field goals. And he made a lot of big field goals that including the game winner against Washington State. A kick we're never going to forget. Is that it? Can he get over that hiccup that seemed to plague him, inside 30 yards, whatever that is? I'm interested to see where things go with punter. Is Tom Snee the guy, or does somebody else get a shot there? There's a lot of different minutia there. But I think the biggest question for me, anytime there's a quarterback battle, obviously it's a big question, but how do you take advantage of all that talent in the secondary? How often do you play nickel or even dime? How do you deploy, Graham and Lenore and Mikael Wright as corners, Breeze and Pickett and Verone McKinley. You added a transfer in Bennett Williams, at safety. I mean, there's just so many guys back there. Just what does that open up in terms of options? So at the end of the year, what personnel group is going to get the most snaps? It's probably the nickel group, but it could be a lot more different looks and a lot different percentages in terms of how often you use different personnel groups. I'll be really fascinated to see how things shake out in the secondary. I didn't even mention Javon Holland by name. I mean, he goes without saying, he's going to be somewhere. He's just an elite dude. So, he's going to be on the field. So, and then I named 7 or 8 other options, and I didn't name Dante Manning either. So it's going to be really intriguing to see how all that gets sorted out.
Yeah, definitely a good problem to have if you're the Oregon coaching staff, Andy Avalos. Just an embarrassment of riches. Well, hey Rob, that's all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk Ducks football with me. I could go on all day, but we'll have to wrap it up here.
Yeah, no problem. We can get together again some other time too. It's fun. And again, I appreciate your audience. I appreciate how locked in everybody stays throughout the year. I appreciate how I've appreciated the patience of Oregon fans too. It's like to your credit, I haven't been getting blown up. What's going to happen? What's the ticketing situation going to look like? I think people have been really, for the most part, willing to sit back and say, hey, there's a lot of unknowns and we're going to get you answers as soon as we have them. And, we don't necessarily have them yet. So people have really stood by us and been patient that way too. So I really, really appreciate that too.
Definitely. Well, hopefully I'll be seeing you in person somewhat soon. Who knows?
Absolutely. That press box probably look a little different this year, but if we can say we're in there covering a game, whatever it looks like, I think we'll both take it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take whatever I can get.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate you, Rob. Have a good one.
You too. Go Ducks.
Bye. Go Ducks. All right, guys, that'll do it for another video here on the Scoop Duck YouTube channel. It was really fun to talk to Rob and share some thoughts on the Oregon football team and, you know, reminisce a little bit on the past, talk about that transition between the Taggart area. I thought that was the Taggart era, excuse me. I thought it was really interesting to get his thoughts on that, seeing that he was, you know, within the program as that transition was going on. So really cool to talk to him. If you guys are new to the channel and you enjoyed this video, I have other ones just like it where I talk to recruits and commits in the Oregon 2021 class and, you know, the recruiting trail. So I'll be sure to link some of those videos here on the screen at the end. You know, moving forward, one thing I'm really looking forward to, I don't want to give it away, but I am going to be adding a new sport here on the channel, talking with some recruits there. So keep an eye out for that. That should be coming up here in the near future. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.